Friends, thank you for joining us for another live stream, and this being part of the SPTV Live part of the channel. We have a very, very special guest today that has an incredible knowledge in the circles that I used to run with. He was a film director, and before we bring him on, I'm going to read you a brief description. We have so much to talk about that I'd like to have this guy on multiple times if possible because he's a plethora of knowledge, but we're going to be focusing on Project Celebrity specifically today, because that's where our stories kind of coincide. So I'm going to read to you from the description box about who our guest is, and then we'll bring him on. So Mitch Brisker is a former Scientology film director. Me and him, I am an actor and fellow ex-Scientologist as well. We're going to be unraveling the intricacies of Project Celebrity, and we're going to delve into the allure that entices actors and artists to get into Scientology and what they feel they're getting out of it and why they use it. For nearly 3 decades, Mitch Brisker held a pivotal role at Golden Era Productions, where he served as a non-Sea Org director. During his tenure, he orchestrated the creation of Scientology training films, crafting instructional pieces that have shaped the beliefs and practices of countless followers. And undoubtedly, I've seen probably many of Mitch's instruction films while I was doing the Scientology training. And he is also responsible for the Super Bowl ads between 2013 and 2017. Undoubtedly, you've seen them. And they were basically used, as Mitch will tell you, to keep people in the bubble, believing that Scientology was expanding, because they certainly didn't communicate to the outside world. And beyond this interview, Mitch has a channel that's called Scientology, The Big Lie, where he expands upon this. And he's going to be putting up a lot more content. And there'll be a link in the description box for that. So this is probably going to be a fairly long interview. I'm sure we're going to jump all over the place because we both know so many different celebrities and ran with a lot of the same people. But remarkably, we never ran into each other as far as we know. Without further ado, let's bring on the man of the hour himself. Mitch, my friend, how are you doing?
Great. Hi, Doug. Thanks.
Hey,
And thanks for that introduction.
No problem.
It was at least half right.
Please fix it.
I'll take it all. It was good. Thank you very much.
Please fix it, my man. There's so much to talk about.
I'm just joking. The most intriguing part is that we never ran into each other. So that's kind of amazing because we do know a lot of the same people.
It almost seems impossible that we didn't run into each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were going to, go ahead.
No, please.
No, we were going to jump into Project Celebrity because it's something, it gets mentioned from time to time. A lot of people know about it. It's certainly not a secret, but I think it's worth covering again because it actually was the impetus which eventually spawned Celebrity Center and, Scientology's concerted effort to draw in musicians and artists and actors as a way to, buff up its image. So let's start with Project Celebrity.
This is what he's referring to, guys. It's a famous policy by L. Ron Hubbard. Since you can't see it too well, I will read it. You can follow along. Obviously, the appeal of a cult getting celebrities would be if John Travolta and Tom Cruise and other actors are into it, then it must be good, and it helps to hide maybe some of their more criminal activities. Project Celebrity. This is written by Hubbard. If we are to do anything about society at large, we must first do something about its communication lines. One of the parts of this is Project Celebrity. There are many to whom America and the world listens. On the backs of these are carried most of the enthusiasms on which the society runs. It is vital on our third dynamic operation. Orwellian translation for third dynamic, that means group. To put such persons into wonderful condition. It is obvious what would happen to America if we helped its leaders to help others. Project Celebrity is part of that program. It's obvious what would happen to Scientology if prime communicators benefiting from it would mention it now and then. Herein you find a list of celebrities. If you want one of these, write us at once. And notice also in this dialogue how Hubbard is treating people like robots or inanimate objects, not actually human beings. Giving the one celebrity you have selected. We will then allocate this person to you as your game. Having been awarded one of these celebrities, listen to the nomenclature. It will be up to you to learn what you can about your quarry. And then that means game, like as in hunting. about your quarry and then put yourself at every hand across his or her path. In other words, bug the shit out of them and keep putting Scientology there until they get in, and not permitting discouragements or no's or clerks or secretaries to intervene in days or weeks or months to bring your celebrity into a formal auditing session and deliver an amount of good auditing necessary to, one, make him much more effective, and two, make him aware of the benefits of Scientology on the third or group dynamic. And you can already see there, my friends, just why Scientologists might be so effective and undying and never ending in their pursuit of somebody to get them into Scientology. Finance, your pay, your expenses on this hunt are up to you. Obviously, at whatever future date, the investment will repay itself some dozens of times. And then it goes into awards that you get. That's number one. Number two, restrain any other auditor from bothering your game. Three, give your tuition fee, 2 weeks of special coaching at the Hubbard Professional College in Phoenix. In parentheses, you would have to pay your transport and living costs. Four, assist by mailings to the celebrity, your actions. And then here we have Project Celebrity. And these are many of the people that Hubbard wanted to target. And you'll notice we have everyone from Edward R. Murrow to Ed Sullivan. I believe Walt Disney's in here. We have Jackie Gleason and Cecil B. DeMille. I'm surprised Charles Manson isn't in here. And all sorts of other ones. With that ramble, Mitch, did you want to, since you know way more about this, did you want to riff off that and say something about
Well, it was actually, it was in a newsletter called Ability, which was a newsletter that was sent out to Scientologists. So it was kind of a broadly distributed publication. I believe Hubbard was on the ship when he wrote that, but I'm not certain. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, just not the intent behind it, the boldness behind it, but the choice of names is very, very, very strange. I mean, I don't want to get political, but they tended to be very sort of right-wing,
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Conservative people, like Walter Winchell, who had given him that great plug when Dianetics came out. Walter Winchell was the one who wrote, Dianetics is greater than the discovery of fire.
That's right. Oh, he's the one that wrote that, Mitch?
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
Hubbard?
yeah.
Really?
No, Walter Winchell wrote that. And Walter Winchell was a really nasty character who destroyed political and professional competition, had literally destroyed people's lives. Like he was, I forget what you call it, but he was like a puppet master and destroyed a lot of people, Hollywood careers, blah, blah, blah. There's a very famous film. This is an aside, a film written by Ben Heck that Burt Lancaster produced that you may be aware of, called The Sweet Smell of Success. And in that film, Burt Lancaster plays this character, a really nasty press agent who's based on Walter Winchell. So I always like there's some less than great people on there in terms of celebrity. And then Sammy Davis Jr. was on there and all kinds of people. But I think it's just mostly the boldness with which he just put this thing out, and that he referred to them as prey, like you're going to go hunt them down and they're like a trophy, and we'll give you a certificate. It was pretty crazy, but nothing really happened with it. As far as I know, nobody really acted on it. And then Yvonne Gillum, who would later marry Heber Jensch and become Yvonne Jensch, she left the ship. She was, an executive on the Apollo. And I believe she left the ship because Hubbard was pursuing her romantically. She was married, she had kids, and she, didn't want to be pursued by him. So she left the ship and she went to LA and she founded Celebrity Center.
That's how she founded it. What a fascinating story.
Yeah. And then, I don't have absolute proof of why she left the ship, but, we do know that he was, even her daughter, Janice, who I knew and know now, was, spoken about this thing that he was pursuing her. They never had any kind of relationship, but and Yvonne was a very alluring person because of the kind of person she was, not just because of how she looked, but she was just a person that naturally attracted people to her. She went to LA and she started Celebrity Center. Yep. And really, she first started it as a kind of what they called a city office. It wasn't a church. They didn't even deliver services. She had such a genuine concern about helping artists to launch their careers that she just wanted to have an office where artists could come in and get some counseling. It wasn't even for money. And then over a short period of time, they grew into becoming a church and delivering services. And obviously CC really blew up. Celebrity Center, that was when I got there. It was like early 1973. And it was
that was the year I was born, by the way, Mitch.
Yeah.
And when I was born, you had gotten to the Celebrity Center.
Yeah. I think.
Can I ask you one quick question? Because
Sure.
we're already getting into the incredibly fascinating information. Yvonne is the one who started Celebrity Center.
Right.
And before we get up to there and we dive off into what, Mitch, Bobby Lyons and all the freaking people we knew, we're going to talk about the acting center, the way that they recruit Scientologists today. But before we get off into all this, do you want to give a brief background on your own kind of acting career and how you got into Scientology? And then we'll pick it up at 1973 when you go to LA, just so people know who you are. Because I know you've been making the rounds, Mitch, but some people won't have seen you'll be brand new to them. And I want them to know your own history a little bit.
Yeah, my acting career is random, spontaneous, and
it's cool though, man.
And it was not something I ever aspired to. I was in film school at California Institute of the Arts at the time. I had also been a drug user, and I was addicted to heroin, essentially. Wow. And during a period when I was not on heroin, myself and my girlfriend at the time were cast in a film called Dusty and Sweets McGee. And
what is that again? I want to pull it up while you're talking.
It was called Dusty and Sweets McGee.
Dusty and Sweets McGee.
I don't know if you have anything on that. It's still
Let me see if I can find it.
It's still streaming on Amazon.
Please keep going. I'll try to pull up the trailer.
Yeah. So anyway, to make a long story short, I was literally cast out of a rehab to be in this film because the director, a guy named Floyd Mutrux, was looking for young, attractive, kids in LA who'd had some experience with drugs and blah, blah, blah. So we were cast in this film. We did the film. We ended up getting back into drugs. She tragically, it opened in July 72. It was like the top grossing film in LA for like 2 weeks.
Really?
And it's in the Museum of Modern Art Permanent Collection. It's still streaming on Amazon.
It is. I actually just found a quick clip of it. Do you want to take a quick look at it?
You found the trailer?
I did. Hopefully, maybe. Do you want to see 60 seconds, or I won't show it if you don't?
It was shot by what's his name? I can't think of his name. Who I ended up working with a bunch later, but
and he's the one that kind of got you into Scientology, right?
Yeah, he did. When my girlfriend tragically died in December of 72, he got me in, and he had just started doing Scientology, and he introduced me to Celebrity Center. It was like January or something, 73. So,
do you want to take a quick look at this trailer?
I don't really care. I don't care. It's like it's.
You were in a movie, for frick's sake.
Yeah. I don't know. Am I in the trailer?
It was. I don't know. Let's see. It might buffer anyways. Friends, if this thing buffers like it has before, I'm still working on it. Let me know, and we won't torture you. But I do want to see if this thing will run.
Did you find it on? Oh, you found it on YouTube?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Here it is, man. I'll put a link, by the way, my friends, in the description box, like I always do, of everything that we cover here, including the trailer.
Yeah, I've written a lot about this in my book. So
nice. Which is coming out soon, by the way, friend.
Coding. It's see, one of the things that he tragically did, I'll tell you later.
Let me see if I can just bring this thing down a little bit.
Kids? What do you tell kids, man?
Okay, so that's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. See, he mixed a bunch of true things with a bunch of fake things.
Was he kind of like a cult guru himself, would you say, Mitch?
Floyd? No, he was a legit Hollywood screenwriting huckster.
He's not the one that got you into Scientology.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Oh, he is. Then how does he get you into Scientology?
He was doing Scientology Celebrity Center.
So he was a Scientologist.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. I didn't know that. I didn't know if he had his own little. This is amazing.
No. He was a film director. He was legit. I mean, he wrote a bunch of films, and he was. Yeah, he had a pretty. Anyway, you can look him up. And
that's him right there.
No. That's one of the actors in the film.
Is he? Which guy is he here? Is he on?
Well, they ended up using our real names, which really pissed me off.
I know.
But
I know.
there's a trailer. Is this the trailer? I don't know.
Let me try to pull up a trailer. That's all I could find there.
There is a trailer of it.
Danny
there you
and
go.
Sweet.
There's the trailer.
This one, preview clip.
Yeah, do that.
Okay, we'll check.
It was shot by Laszlo Kovacs, who was the cinematographer on Easy Rider.
Oh no shit! That makes sense.
No, actually,
no.
This scene was shot. The film overall was shot by what's his name? William A. Fraker, who was one of the most famous cinematographers who ever lived. I mean, there was a really interesting crew. The sound recordist was Bill Randall, who won an Academy Award on In Cold Blood. It was, I have to tell you, as a film student, it was a great experience. As a kid trying to get off drugs, it was the worst thing I should have been doing.
Because he made you kind of method act, Mitch. He kind of used that, your addiction in the film.
Nobody can make you method act, but it was very much ad-libbed from our personal experience. And then it was actually shot from a script, but then Floyd turned around and said that it was all a documentary and he'd followed us around and that's what really happened, which was all a bunch of bullshit. But that's really a whole nother story. So
all right, well, let's check this out. Hopefully it won't buffer too bad. And it already looks amazing, just the music and everything.
For you on the Night Train show with all the tops and pops out of the past on a solid gold weekend. Kicking it off with the Marcells and Blue Moon.
Let me know if we see you in the trailer at all.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm in this trailer. That's Billy Gray, who was on Father Knows Best.
This looks so cool already, man. Okay, that's it on that. Very interesting. I'll have to check that
I'll find a trailer at some point and send it to you. But I think what Floyd was trying to accomplish, he was trying to do like the drug-soaked version of American Graffiti. Because it was around the time American Graffiti came out, and he was kind of trying to cash in on that whole thing. So anyway, that's how I got into Scientology, because I'd been in this film, and then the director brought me in, and I guess and he was a celebrity there, legitimately so, and I think because of that, then I had some cachet at Celebrity Center because I was brought in by this guy and had been in his film. So then, they sort of took me on as a project, and I lived with the staff for about 6 weeks, which is unheard of. So it was really weird because I kept having these what do you call it? Like these experiences with the Sea Org. Like, first they took me in and let me live with them. They didn't even try to recruit me or get any money out of me, just a little bit to cover expenses. The person that was taking care of me said, when you get off of drugs, then we can talk about if you want to stay in Scientology. Doug, it was nothing like it became later. There was this very special time at Celebrity Center where it was genuinely a good thing.
I've heard that.
Yeah, and nobody should think for a second that I have any idea that there's some alternate reality where Scientology goes through some reformation and becomes that thing again, because that's never going to happen. This was a fluke. The all of the cruelty and the bigotry and the culty behavior it's built into Scientology. That happened at Celebrity Center in spite of that, and it's never going to happen again.
Was that because of Yvonne?
It was because of Yvonne. That's the only reason it happened.
I've heard that so many times, Mitch, that she really kind of not went against Hubbard policies, but made it a time when it was a lot of fun and people loved it when the Celebrity Center was first kicking off. Yeah,
she took the good stuff and she sort of disregarded the bad stuff. Or she sort of, not disregard, but just lowered it in its importance, where it's kind of hard to explain, but there's a lot more details that I've written about that I don't want to go into, just because I think we owe our viewers to talk about, why Scientology, not only, I think it's obvious why they go for artists, but I don't think it's so obvious what attracts artists to it. So I think I'd like to kind of steer it onto that. But the early days at Celebrity Center was great. That's how I got in. And I was so then I was always like public at Celebrity Center. I always it was weird because they really did help me get off drugs, that I kind of had this debt to them, which was like having a debt to the mafia,
Yeah.
which you don't want to do because you're never going to be able to repay it. And you'll end up giving more than a pound of flesh, along the way. So it was unfortunate. And all of those original people that helped me, they're all gone. I mean, they either passed away or they left the Sea Org. So, Yvonne, when Celebrity Center started to really get big and prosper, Hubbard yanked her out of there, gave her a really crappy job, and then she died in her 50s of a brain tumor. So,
Really?
he just kind of worked her to death. And then the people who were close to me, around me, helping me there, they all left the Sea Org at some point.
Or some of them are still in.
Except for Ray Midoff, who was the senior CS, the senior case supervisor at Celebrity Center back then. He's still in, but he ended up in the hole under Miscavige and just being brutalized. And he's a really nice guy. It was just like terrible.
They have a lot of nice people in there, man, that got captured. Your capture story is not totally unique. I mean, it's really interesting.
Yeah,
but like you said,
not.
You had no idea you were entering an alternate reality.
No, not at all. And there's, when you leave a cult like Scientology, and especially I think Scientology, because there's like the big three. I call them the big three. It's like Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, and the Church of Scientology, which is like the Church of Scientology is minuscule compared to its the other two of its cohort, what I consider its cohort, like the big ticket cults, the religious cults. I mean, the Mormons have $300 billion. David Miscavige has $3 billion. There's like no comparison, but for some reason, Scientology gets all the headlines, and it's because of the celebrities.
I was just going to say that. By the way, if we have any Mormons, ex-Mormons, because there will be people that will take issue with that, Mitch. I don't at all. I think Mormonism and Jehovah's are destructive cults, but people that are members of that or apologists, they go, what are you talking about? Mormonism's not a destructive cult, but I would agree. And if we do have any ex-Mormons and or Jehovah's Witnesses, what celebrities were part of your cult? Because didn't they have some, Mitch? Didn't Jehovah's Witnesses have Prince and a couple?
Michael Jackson?
Michael Jackson? No, I think they tried Scientology.
Yeah, Michael Jackson was a Jehovah's Witness. He was raised
really.
He was raised in a Jehovah's Witness family. Yeah,
I
for
didn't
sure.
know that.
Yeah, but I'm not here to impugn other religions. They're doing a good job of that on their own. But my only point was to the YouTube audience. Sometimes when you say things like, "Yeah, there were a bunch of nice people in Scientology," they're like, they don't want to hear it because they're bloodthirsty. They want to hear everybody was like a robot and crazy. And but in all of these groups, at least I don't know any Jehovah's Witnesses. I knew one once, and he was not doing well. But somebody I grew up with, a brilliant musician who went to college and then ended up in the Jehovah's Witnesses, and just spent the rest of his life knocking on doors, and it was really tragic. But I knew a lot of Mormons. My former wife grew up in a Mormon household, not hardcore Mormon, just sort of, just there's different levels, like with, like with Jews, there's like liberal Jews and conservative Jews and devout Jews and whatever. But like, there's a lot. I've never met a Mormon that I didn't like as a person. There's a lot of really nice people, and there's a lot of really nice people in Scientology. The people that helped me back in Scientology, some of these celebrities are very, very nice people. Some of them are absolute nightmares. David Campbell was a good friend of mine. David, the musician, that a lot of people know him as Beck's father, but David has amazing credits as an orchestrator, and he wrote string arrangements for he did all of James Taylor's big hits and Linda Ronstadt's big hits. Really? That's David Campbell playing strings, and he did all the string arrangements. I mean, he has amazing credits, and he did some commercials for me just, back in the 80s, 90s, just because I knew him and I needed, something done for a commercial, and like he composed some stuff for me. But, he was recruited by a guy named Mario Fenninger. Well, I don't know if you ever heard of him, but
that name sounds familiar somehow.
Yeah, Mario was a world-class concert pianist.
Yes, Scientologist.
Who was an early Scientologist, who was one of these kind of wonderful people that was brought in under Yvonne Jetch. So, you had these people like Chick Corea and Mario Penninger, and then you had these actors like, Jeffrey Lewis and others like Karen Black and
Juliette Lewis,
well,
obviously being the
she's
daughter
like the
of
next
Jeffrey Lewis,
she's like the
the
next
next generation.
generation. But I'm talking about that original kind of magical group that was at Celebrity Center. So, and then even some of you even had Jeff Levin, who was in this org and then out of this org, but he was one of the very talented musicians who was part of that early Celebrity Center group, and he actually recorded as part of a band for a guy named Jimmy Sferos, who tragically died in a motorcycle accident back in the 80s. But Jimmy was a Columbia Records recording star who I think he did 3 albums, and he would have been as well known as Bruce Springsteen had he not, or Jackson Browne, somebody more like that, had he not died, because he was a phenomenal musician. So there were all these people. So that Scientology, it had all this legitimacy as a home for artists.
Why do you think that is, Mitch? What I mean, we're gonna
I think it's because
what keeps them in there.
Yeah, I think
what are we getting out of it?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it was Vaughn kind of, the world back then in the 70s when I got in, it was very chaotic. I mean, the Vietnam War was still going on, and you had like what was in our recent memory. You had the assassination of Martin Luther King and JFK was a bit ago, but RFK, and then you had Nixon elected president. Things were really chaotic, and the whole youth movement didn't really work out. The youth movement got basically, was in a wash with drugs, and so things were very chaotic, and people were looking for some kind of community and some kind of structure, and so there were lots of cults offering cultural alternatives began to spring up in those days. Right, not just Scientology. So
tons of them.
There was that. There was this sort of a for us in the 70s when we got in, Scientology was counterculture. You don't think of it that way today. Nobody thinks it's a counterculture movement. They think whatever they think, they don't think that. They think a number of things.
But back in the day they did, right, Mitch?
Yeah, it was like counterculture. It was like, this was going to bring together the things that a lot of us had worked for and fought for, and the reason we ditched school to go demonstrate against the war, or the reason that we took mind expanding drugs because we were looking for a new level of consciousness, whatever it was. Scientology really represented that, which it lost that. So that I think moving forward, when it became so much more business-like, and I can't think of the word, but it's sort of very aggressively pursuing members. It really then started to prey on people's insecurity, because one thing that's common amongst artists is there's a general sense of insecurity because you're embarking on a kind of a brave pathway if you really intend to have some authenticity in what you're doing. You're on kind of an exploration, whether you're a painter or a filmmaker or a musician or an actor. And Scientology offered to give you a foundational stability so that as an artist, you had the tools to keep from sort of collapsing, to keep you focused. I even heard the other day, Aaron Smith Levin replayed some media service had replayed an old interview with John Travolta, and then Aaron picked that up and showed it. And even in that interview, John said, "Well, Scientology has given me the tools to keep me from, imploding." However, he said it as an artist, like to keep me from going through that collapse that happens to a lot of artists. So that's one of its alluring factors that kind of draws people in.
I felt special too, Mitch, like doing the training routines, doing the kind of stuff that I was studying at Bobby Lyons' class, who you worked with on at Gold Base, right? You
I knew Bobby. I mean, I have nothing but good things to say about Bobby.
Same here, man. He was
he's
such a lovely
great guy.
man. He's still probably in there too, Mitch. The last time I left,
he's got to be 80 years old, and he's he's a truly gifted actor.
No shit.
I think Scientology is like a lot of people lost their legitimacy just because they didn't make the transition to having the power that let's say John Travolta had or Tom Cruise had. So
I even heard it through the grapevine, Mitch. I told you the other night on the phone that I do believe that Bobby's career was held back because he was touted as the next Jack Nicholson. He was going to be that big, but the casting directors and such, they didn't like the fact that he was a Scientologist. So I think
yeah,
that did actually have an effect on his career, man.
yeah. Funny, Jack Nicholson. I always thought of Bobby as the next. What's his name? I'm embarrassed. I can't think of it. My brain's not working.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I'll think of it. But yeah, he was definitely one of these guys who had this charisma and this appeal that as soon as you saw the guy on screen, you were like, that's a movie star.
Yeah. And I got to hang out with this guy, Mitch, at his house. I took care of his dog. We were really close. And he was on OT7 for 10 freaking years, man. He's just going on. Hopefully he graduated and he hit OT8 eventually.
Yeah, I think he did.
Really?
But I think so. I don't know. I haven't spoken with him in a long time. So I have no idea.
There's something called the Actor Center that we also talked about on the phone, my man. When I left, it was Bobby Lyons. And
was
Milton
Bobby involved in
Gonzalez.
that? Oh, you mean?
No. I mean, the Scientology.
Let's just jump into that category. So then
Sure.
The other aspect is specifically with actors was the acting schools that were run by Scientologists.
Yeah.
The father of them being Milton Gonzalez, who I remember was a fixture at Celebrity Center back in the 70s when I was there. And he knew Hubbard personally. They were friends. I remember seeing lots of pictures of Milton. I met him a few times, but I was not back into my professional career yet. He's had a lot of very successful students have come out of there from, you know more of them than I do, but like Ann Archer and Jason McGay and a bunch of people who went on to have really good careers. And the Beverly Hills Playhouse, his school was, which today is owned and run by a guy who left Scientology and spoke out.
Right.
So it no longer has anything to do with Scientology. But it was a real feeder. It was very much a feeder group into Scientology. A lot of people signed up for Milton's classes, and then from that were influenced to get into Scientology. So that was one. And then on a much smaller but more intimate, personal boutique level was Bobby Lyons.
Yep.
Robert F. Lyons, if you want to look him up. And he ran a very successful acting school I think it was in North Hollywood, right? I think.
He was at a couple places, Mitch. We were in North Hollywood all in around, but we had a couple different places that we'd bounced to over the years.
Yeah. And he had.
And at his house, he would have, Mitch, he taught like multiple times a week. So we do it. It was the ultimate training. So we would study, like on a Tuesday night at the theater, and we'd do 5-hour classes. They would go forever.
Wow.
And then we go to his house on Wednesday to do cold reading, and we'd all hang out. It was such a fucking cool environment, man. I'm missing it just thinking about it. Yeah. Seriously, I don't hold anything against Bobby for being a Scientologist. I don't give a shit. He was just a great acting teacher and a good man. And he knew how to teach.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of good people in there.
Oh, by the way, Mitch, I ran into him at the actor studio. He encouraged me and my best friend to go audition at the actor studio, which
the one in LA?
Yeah. The famous one where
the Strasbourg one.
Yeah, exactly. James Dean used to go there. Jack Nicholson, apparently had to do 10 auditions or whatever to get in. It's like, and it was run by Martin Landau, RIP, who died a few years ago. But without rambling, I just wanted to make a point that I ran into Bobby Lyons a couple years ago, and he sat next to me at my acting class, and either him or I got up because Bobby was not allowed to kind of be in the same room as me, even though he's the one that encouraged me to go audition there and get in. And I never saw him again. And I was looking for him at the break, and he was gone. So I'm sure he went to CC and probably wrote my ass up. It's so unfortunate.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Well, yes.
Anyway, sorry to get off track, man.
No, it's okay. Yeah, you reminded me. It was James Dean. I always thought of Bobby Lyons as the next James Dean.
Oh, right. Yeah, I could definitely see
he
that.
was just old enough, young enough to fit into that, and he was very much in that sort of that. I don't know. He reminded me a lot of James Dean. Yeah, I can't say you look better. So anyway, here we are, folks. Nice to see you all without Doug. He'll be back. I think he might have lost his battery. I'm not sure. So
Can you hear me at least in the meantime?
yeah, I can
Mitch?
hear you. Definitely.
Okay, I'm going to put you on full screen. Keep talking,
no
and I'll
problem.
fix this.
No problem. Yeah, we used to see Bobby a lot on television. He did a lot of work. So yeah, so there was Robert F. Lyons in his acting school. There was Milton Casellas in his acting school. And then as of late, I don't know when, but then the newest acting school, which is based entirely on Scientology principles, is called the Acting Center. It's out in the Sherman Oaks, I think, in the Valley part of Los Angeles. And there's a couple guys out there who, Scientology actors like Jim Miscavige, who runs it, and they basically use Scientology principles for teaching. And they actually have, I know this for a fact because they were friends of mine and I'd worked with a bunch of them. There's some very specific technology that Hubbard developed for actors, and they got permission from Scientology management, from the Religious Technology Center. They got permission to actually export that technology and use it at their school. So just a little heads up on that. If you want to study acting as Hubbard taught it, then that would be a place to go.
I'm still fixing it, Mitch. Keep going, my friend.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no problem. No problem. And then I think one of the interesting things with respect to Hubbard and acting was I'm sure many of you have heard of the Stanislavski method of acting. He was a Russian actor and acting teacher in the early 1900s he was the first one to develop a system of acting that was based on an individual inspecting their own personal life and their own experiences and then drawing upon that to build a character and a performance. And Hubbard was vehemently opposed to Stanislavski or anything that had anything to do with them. And because he said he was like a psychiatrist, he was psychiatrically influenced. So even though that school of acting really represented kind of a very, I think, rich kind of a wealth of knowledge about that method isn't taught anymore, but it's still valid because I don't think it's taught anymore in America, but it's still valid because it represents this first time that actors would inspect their own lives or their own character, their own personality for drawing on a career. But Scientology actors were forbidden from going near this or knowing anything about it, which I always found. I used to listen to them talk about Stanislavski, and I'm like, what? You've never even read him. You don't even know what you're talking about. So one of the other ways in which a cult controls information is that in the case of that acting method, Stanislavski, the Scientologist actors were forbidden from using it or knowing about it or studying it. Did we get you back there, Doug? Okay, I guess not. I guess there.
Yes, I was trying to. The camera is too close at the moment, but that's good enough, anyways. I'm here, right?
Yeah.
God, one of these days, Mitch is the one that helped me set this camera up. And thank God I got it working, but I'm still having troubles with it, Mitch. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I'm going to come over with a 6-pack and we're going to sort it out.
That would be fucking awesome, man. Did we have any? That was a great riff, by the way, though. I heard what you were just talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, we had the main actor classes that people went to was Bobby Lyons, Milton Casellas, who kind of met a. Do you want to talk a little bit about how? Did you have any insight on how Milton?
I noticed somebody here referred to Hannah referred to the Acting Center being set up by Strasberg, but that was not the name of Strasberg School. It was not the Acting Center.
Wonder what she's thinking of. Anna's pretty keen on a lot of stuff. So
you went to Strasberg School. It was called the Actors Workshop. Yeah, didn't you say you went to the Actors Workshop in LA?
I don't even know. We did some. Yes, I don't remember, my man. I went to a few, and then I went to the Beverly Hills Playhouse. That was kind of my first real one. We did a little bit of the what do they call that? Where you ask back and forth, you both say the same word, and you just react. Not Stanislavski, but I'm drawing a blank on it. I did a few bullshit classes before I finally got into Gary Imhoff's class at the actor student or at the Beverly Hills
Beverly,
Playhouse.
yeah.
You remember Gary?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah,
know
I knew
Gary?
him really. I knew him well. We did projects together.
And I think he's still in too, by the way.
Yeah, of course he is. He's a good actor. I mean, all these guys, I don't think they realized how much their careers were
Yeah.
actually being sort of Scientology really put the thought, the thinking of Scientology can really put the brakes on your career because it can steer you in the direction of thinking that you need to develop certain skills and abilities, and while you're actually developing other skills and abilities. So you can really sort of just
Exactly.
you can really kind of throw a wrench in there. So, and some people have done really well in spite of it. They've had decent careers in spite of it.
But they're probably not using Scientology, right? We talked about this, like
I think
Juliette
so.
Lewis and stuff. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily seem like they're
Yeah, I
using the
don't-
tone scale and all that stuff that they were
Yeah,
kind of teaching.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I know that her dad didn't. I worked with Jeffrey, and he was
Meaning her dad wasn't, Jeffrey wasn't really, he was a hardcore Scientologist.
yeah. But his acting technique, because I worked with him, it wasn't like. I mean, I know when I worked with Jeffrey and Bobby, we never talked about a performance in terms of Scientology, in terms
Yeah,
of
me neither.
the tone scale or whatever. But since you brought it up, I mean, the tone scale I think is one of the tools that fascinates actors because there's this kind of concept in acting that your body and your who you are the instrument, you are what you play as an actor. And so because Hubbard broke down this thing that has this sort of fake scientific veneer called the emotional tone scale, that somehow a study of and a mastery of could then contribute to your ability as an actor. And I think that was a very attractive thing to a lot of actors. So
I never used that either in Scientology,
Yeah.
but it was like a major thing. I'll actually show a picture of it. So people didn't the acting center start to use specifically tone scale drills or something like that? Don't
Well,
they
I
use
mean,
that?
I don't know exactly what they use because I've never seen their actual curriculum, but I know that there is specific quote unquote technology that Hubbard developed for actors, and I know that they use that because they got permission to use that stuff. So, because it's all copyrighted material. So,
Right. And didn't they have like just for a timeline for people, we had Bobby Lyons and Milton Casalas kind of going on at the same
Yeah.
time. And then right when I left in January 2008, the new hip school that you were talking about, Mitch, is run by Jim Meskimen, kind of a C-level actor, who's been in and around Scientology forever.
yeah,
And his
yeah,
mother played Marion, I believe, on Happy
Yeah.
Days, right? It's
right.
a small freaking world. So we had
Right.
those two. And then right when I was leaving, Mitch, they had the Actor Center, and that's where all the hip, young
Yeah, did
Scientology
it start?
actors.
Did it start that early?
About then, I
yeah,
remember it was
don't-
just kicking off right when I was kind of leaving.
Yeah.
Do you know, didn't they use don't they have special things like that you learned at Gold called SIN reports or something that was based on Hubbard
No.
technology or something? Do you know
Doesn't
what I'm
ring a
talking about?
bell. No, but Hubbard wrote some. He wrote 500. They call them EDs, which stands for executive directive. He wrote a ton of executive directives. He wrote 500 of them pertaining to the subject of cinema, which were called the cine EDs.
That's what I mean.
And they maybe had a couple of those. I don't know. I kind of don't think so. I think if anything, they were transcribed and exported because those things are never, ever, ever, ever allowed to leave the base up there. But there was a cine ED covering stage managers and stage presence and how you rehearse. And there was a checklist for actors. Like, this is the checklist you go through. You do your character research. It was all just borrowed stuff. It was all just like if you didn't do this stuff, you were not doing your job. So, and it was like, you learn your you go through your business and you learn your marks and you research the time period of the character. It's just the stuff like that you would do if you had half a brain. And if you hadn't learned those things in school, you should probably go back and get your money back from wherever you studied acting. So,
Along the lines of one of the things that was interesting me, why I stuck with Scientology, I did feel like I had a special tech with the TRs, with the tone scale, something about being in the environment with Bobby and feeling like we were learning like this special technology. When you were working with, well, first of all, who are some of the people that you did work with at Gold? Or better yet, I mean, who did you not work with, right? Because you met most of the famous celebrity actors, including Jason Begay, when you were reshooting, when you were shooting films and also reshooting, no?
No, I never reshot anything with Jason. I mean, we did a film, a really
Not with
interesting.
him, but
Yeah, we did a really interesting film with. I had to reshoot a film as a result of him leaving. Which,
right.
Jason, I had no problem with that. I had no problem with you leaving. You were a good friend. I love you, and so I just don't want anybody to get the idea. Because even when Jason left, I didn't consider it like he and was speaking out. I didn't consider it a hit against me. I just thought, oh well, he just needs to do what he needs to do to get away from this. And if he needs to speak out just for his own sense of mental well-being, then he needs to do that. And I was put in a really awkward position about 2 weeks after Jason left. If you remember that, that was like a big deal.
Yes. And
I
you
think it was
were in at the time.
yeah, big time. I was in big time. And you know, for the longest time, I just directed films, but then slowly over time, there's a thing called mission creep, right? Where the mission starts to extend and you start to get pulled into things. Like I would get pulled into these things of like, you know, Jason Begay spoke out on YouTube, and you know, it 10 minutes, he got 500,000 views and blah blah blah, and he's going to be interviewed on the Matt Lauer show, and we need to we need to talk him out of it, and we've been calling him incessantly for 3 days, and he won't pick up the phone, and that Tommy Davis came up to me with we all know who Tommy Davis is, I'm sure, but he was sort of taking Mike Rinder's place as international spokesperson, and Tommy had an unbelievable way of just sticking a super expensive handmade shoe foot right in his mouth, because he was just like blundered his way through being a spokesperson. Tommy came up to me with a recording device and said, "Put this on your phone, record the call, call Jason, you know, the boss, as they used to call him, which was like a joke, Miscavige, wants you to call him and talk him out of doing the Matt Lauer show." So I was like, fuck, the guy's my friend. I don't care that he loves Scientology. That's his business. And now you want me to call him. So I'm thinking, okay. I'm not going to record the call because that's illegal in the state of California without telling the person and getting their permission, right? Mm-hmm. So I called him up. I dialed his number. I was in his phone, so my name popped up. He picked it up in the second ring and said, "Hello, sir." And I was like flabbergasted because I was like, "Jason, it's just Mitch." Anyway, so we had a really nice talk. I mean, it was very emotional, like the talk. And I just basically told him that I didn't think associating himself so heavily with leaving Scientology would be good for his career, which I think in the short term it wasn't, but in the long term it didn't matter, because obviously his career took off and he's doing great. But yeah, and then, then I told Tommy after the call, I said, "Oh, the recorder didn't work. Sorry." So
really, so did you feel a bond towards? You didn't become like, "Oh, Jason left the church. I don't like him anymore," like normal Scientologists would do. Really interesting. How were you able to walk that line, Mitch?
I don't know. It's just who I am. I mean, because I had some, part of it might have. I don't know. It's really, I'm still unpacking all that shit. So I'm not going to give you a pat answer on that. And I'm not trying to say that I wasn't. I was more. What pissed me off is that I didn't get a chance to talk to Jason before he left, and not to even talk him out of it, but I wanted to understand what his reasoning was. And when I saw his YouTube interview, I totally understood that this person had arrived at a certain place and they needed to extract themselves from Scientology. And the only way they could do it was to speak out. And I had great sympathy for anybody who did that. I didn't think of them. I mean, some people were just mean and nasty and they'd make shit up. But Jason was just telling his experience. I think in the back of my mind, even in 2009, I knew I wasn't going to last. I just didn't have another plan, because I was in a very important position. I had all of these crew members under me that relied on me. And a lot of them were good people who were trapped in this work. And I knew I'd be fucking them over if I left. And then I had, a wife and kids, and then an ex-wife and alimony or spousal support. So there was all these complications. Like nothing is just simple. And then when I arrived at the point where I started seeing, or actually witnessed firsthand, Miscavige's just brutal treatment of staff, people say, "Well, you should have just walked to your car and just driven away." And yeah, you're right. I should, but I didn't. And there's a lot of reasons that I didn't. And, I'm still working through a lot of that stuff. But I remember the call with Jason fondly. And I remember at the end of it, he said, the part of it was pretty heated because he was upset. Not, I wasn't heated about it. He was really upset. And then at the end of the call, it got very quiet. And he said, what are you doing wasting your talent working for gold?
Really?
And I didn't have an answer. And that, I'm telling you, if I ever get to thank Jason for anything, it will be for him asking me that question, because I was like, that would come back to me at times. Go, what am I doing? Wasting my talent?
Really? That would kind of go in your head throughout the years.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Oh
yeah. Because he really meant it. Like, he and I worked together. He was one of the few actors that we hung out outside of gold. Like, there was only a couple of people that I really became friends with. I mean, I knew everybody, not everybody, but
almost everybody.
Yeah, Larry Anderson, I'd worked with a lot. We never hung out. Not that I wouldn't hang out with Larry, mostly because I didn't have time. But
were you busy all the time, Mitch, working for David Miscavige and just one project after another? Always had your cell phone ready to at any hour?
Yeah. It was mostly, it was mostly 5 days a week, and I was off on weekends, especially when I had kids. Well, I still have kids, but when they were small. But still, the phone was always on, and you'd never know when you were going to get a random call that there was some crisis. You'd have to go back up. Look, here's a little anecdote I'll tell you. There was an actor I had a lot of respect for named John Rick Seymour. He was a playwright, a stage actor, and a director, a very talented guy. And I hired this guy to play the part of a supervisor. And if anybody's watching this who's a Scientologist or was a Scientologist and saw any tech films that opened with a guy who was a case supervisor, this guy, he was kind of like a Joseph Cotton kind of character, very substantial. And he would open the film and close the film. I hired this guy, John Rick Seymour, and you would never guess, but this guy was an original Green Beret, and he had been in Cambodia in 1963, and he'd run like assassination missions into North Vietnam, where they had to kill like political and military officials and then bring their head back in a bag for compliance.
Really?
Oh yeah. And I mean, hey, yeah, you tell me, you have no idea how heavy a head is after you carry it in the jungle for 3 days. It weighs 16 pounds. Anyway, so nobody knew in the Scientology world that the CS was being played, and he was like a gentle warrior.
What the fuck, Mitch? I can't believe what you just said. That was the guy that I think I know who you're talking about. That guy was not a Scientologist, and that was his background.
He was
Didn't they do a background check on him before hiring him for such a?
They didn't care about that. He's a war hero. Listen, he ran what's called Operation Phoenix, which you can read about.
The Phoenix program, no shit.
Yeah, he was on Operation Phoenix. They ran.
I know exactly what that was about.
Yeah. He wrote a book about it. But anyway, he and I became good friends because he was a gentleman warrior. He was like a poet warrior. He was a very gentle guy from a wealthy family in Connecticut. He wasn't your like your SEAL Team 6 kind of guy, right? But the reason I'm telling you this is because with all of the trauma that John had gone through, he told me that it took 10 years. He lived in Connecticut, so his backyard was like a forest. It took 10 years before he could walk on his own property without looking for tripwires from booby traps.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So, and then after I left, and then every time my phone would ring when I worked for gold, when I wasn't there, when I was at home or with my kids or doing something personal, every time my phone would ring, my body would squirt out like these doses of adrenaline and cortisol. And these same things that happened to soldiers, the same thing that happened to John, right? Like it's your body is so traumatized. So then when I left, which was coincidental with COVID, I just stopped going up there. Mm-hmm. After about 4 months, it didn't take me 10 years, but I still have other things that are easy triggers. But after about 4 months, the phone rang one day, and I was like, "Wow, that was just the phone ringing." Like I didn't give a fuck who it was.
Really, 4 months.
So yeah. So anyway, sorry for taking so long with that.
No. This is fascinating, man.
Yeah.
Please keep
So
going.
yeah. So anyway, you asked about people that I worked with. Obviously, I worked with Larry Anderson, who's not a household word like Jason Begay is, but Larry was a very talented actor
Hmm.
and probably would have had a much greater career if he hadn't been involved in Scientology. Fortunately, he left quite a long time ago.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, when Jenna Elfman was 19 years old, before she was an actress, she got cast. I used to do these like in music videos that they'd show at events.
I know what
They
you're
would,
talking about with
yeah,
the
they would write
kids on
these.
stage, or yeah.
No. These were full blown like a music video.
Lindsay
That we,
Bartleston and such.
no. These were done for big international events. These were like the first one I did was called "We Are the Auditors," and they'd write a song like a Scientology song,
Oh Lord.
kind of like Christian rock.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I'm talking
Every church
about?
has to have their music.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they had their Christian rock, and then I would do a music video for that, and we'd shoot in 35 millimeter. It would be a big production. I'd hire dancers, and we'd shoot on location, and they'd be 10-day shoots, and it was a big deal. And so we did. I did one, and we shot it down at at the L.A. at the the Union Station, where they
Mhm.
shot those famous Blade Runner scenes. There's always a huge room in there that's available for shooting. And so
Really?
I shot this. I don't even remember what the context was, but Jenna was on that. She was 19 years old. I think it was the first time she ever appeared on film.
Really? Her first
Yeah,
job was a gold film?
yeah, and I knew her.
Just like Danny, right? Danny Masterson.
Yeah,
One of
like
his
Danny
first
Masterson.
gigs was.
Yeah, I want to forget that I worked with Danny, but
I understand, bro.
and I knew her husband. I knew Bodie. Well, they weren't actually. I don't think they were married yet. And so, I never ate with the crew. It was kind of a joke because they fed them such horrible food. So, we were at Union Station across from Alvera Street. So I told Jenna, hey, come on, I'll buy you lunch. And we went over there and we had a wonderful talk about, she was planning on pursuing a dancing career and she was such a sweet girl. Eventually, over time, she became
A
kind of,
biatch.
she became like an ethics officer.
No
She
shit.
became like, for her fellow Scientologists. Yeah, she really drank a lot of Kool-Aid.
She definitely did.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I did that thing with her when she was 19, and then she was in one of the tech films. Believe it or not, she was in the E. Meter Reed's film.
Really?
Yeah,
an older one, Mitch, because I've seen that a million times and I don't remember.
Yeah,
Jenna
no,
being
you
in
wouldn't recognize her in it. But we, when she did the E. Meter Reed's film, is when she got her first TV series. Right after that, so
it wasn't Dharma and Greg at that time, right?
Yeah,
she probably did it was Dharma and Greg. I'm
no,
sure
no,
she did a bunch of pilots.
It was no. The first thing she did was, because I remember we were doing pickup shots for the film she was in with me, and then she was talking about, oh, I just got Townies with Molly Ringwald. So that was that was her start. So
I remember that.
Yeah, she was really nice. I mean, it's just, if people stay in
wow.
Scientology long enough, man, they really become nasty.
It's true, Mitch. They make kind of secondary sociopaths. And there's another example with Jenna Elfman, because she's real. I did not like her at all.
No,
but you say she was sweet at the beginning,
Very, very much so. So, but yeah, because Scientology is like a finishing school for narcissists, and for a very good reason, because Scientology doesn't believe in God. They believe that you are God. You need to find your own pathway to being God. So
that's crazy, by the way.
Yeah, it's a narcissistic attitude. So.
It is. In fact, you just reminded me of. I doubt I can find it, but you remember that interview that they did with like Erica Christensen and the voice of Bart Simpson. What's her name? The voice of Bart Simpson. Why am I drawing
Nancy Cartwright?
Yeah, and they interviewed her, and she says, "Do you guys believe in God?" And she's like, She kind of stuttered. And then she said, I'm trying to become God. I'm trying to become that.
Did she actually say it?
She did. I'll look it up while we're talking. Let me see.
No, it's fine. I believe you.
Okay. Yeah. I'll link it in the description box, guys, if I can find it, because it's very telling. That all sounded so rational too, my man. When I was in the cold, I thought we were bettering ourselves. It didn't sound bad to try to become a God.
Very
I guess,
empowering. I mean,
why do you think that is, man?
Well, because it's you look out at the night sky and you feel infinitesimally small and compared to the vastness of the universe. Then Scientology comes along and says, no, you're actually infinitesimally big,
Yeah.
and the universe is infinitesimally small, which is actually a principle in Scientology.
Yes.
And it has a very empowering feeling. You know, the other day I heard somebody, I forget who, like a physicist, say that when you trace back what your body consists of, and you realize that it originated from literally the most intricate internal functioning of the universe, you realize that the universe is in you, and you
I've heard
shouldn't feel
that.
small. And that's like a valid thing.
I
But
think so too, man.
yeah,
Like,
but
if Scientology had put it that way, Mitch, I
yeah.
think it wouldn't have been so narcissistic,
Well,
maybe.
you remember the book 88008, right?
Yes, of course. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's the concept of 88008.
Yeah.
That you go from the universe being infinite and you being small to you being
the
infinite and the
opposite.
universe being small. That's a basic principle in Scientology. So it's weird. It's just freaking weird.
I think there's a fine line between the universe is inside of you and the kingdom of heaven is within, versus you are a god and there's an
Yeah.
exact tech on how
Yeah.
to make you into that god. And then Hubbard says we can control our own universe. You know, we're all co-creating this game together.
Yeah.
There was something kind of satanic, or maybe that's not the right word, but there's something super egotistical about the way he framed it, even though the basic concept might have been not too different from saner or less narcissistic wisdom traditions. Because like you said, I mean, if you even trace out the cells in the body and all that, apparently that blueprint looks like the freaking heavens and stuff. And you said the body's
Right.
intricately designed to kind of
Right.
mirror that in a certain way.
Right. Well, it is a fact that, well, it may not be a fact, I don't know, but there's as many neurons, neural connections in the brain is approximately the same as the number of stars in our galaxy. So
Really? What number is that
800
supposed to
million,
be?
something like that. You can look it up. That may have been somebody in the chat is going to post that I'm completely wrong, but
No,
at one point it was, and you know how I know that? It's a whole nother story. I did
Well,
all
what
the-
is it? How do you know that?
Well, because I did all the audio visual properties for the superpower building. And
Really?
yeah. And so I did a lot of research into physiology
Wow.
and, you know, the universe and all kinds of stuff, because I was writing scripts about this and I had to put in crazy facts to make the bullshit seem more real, like more true. So it was like, yeah, I spent a year and a half doing it. You know, there's all these drills you do and superpower. I don't want to get off into that. That's a whole nother thing. But
Okay, are you sure? Because that's some
yeah, no,
crazy
we
ass
could do that
shit,
some other
man.
time. I worked,
Okay.
I designed a lot of the drills and shot films for people. to
You
look at.
designed some of the drills, Mitch, on Superpower?
Mhm.
What do you mean you designed them? I thought it would have to be LRH Tech only.
No, that he never said anything except here. Okay, here's superpower, right? Okay,
What?
didn't know we were going to get off into this, but
We don't have to if you don't want
this-
to, but you
well,
keep
no, it's
saying
fine.
intriguing ass shit, man.
no, but I want to make sure that like your viewers tuned in because we promised to talk about why.
Totally.
Yeah. So I don't. But in essence, Hubbard did a really funny thing when he started making films at La Quinta back in the late 70s, 1980. And he had people who were untrained and didn't know what they were doing, like 16-year-old David Miscavige, who was on camera, and, you know, a bunch of messengers and stuff. You know, they're all competent people probably, but they know nothing about making a film.
Right.
And so they screwed up so abysmally. And Hubbard, he was famous for this. He misidentified their inability to shoot a film. Like, it couldn't have anything to do with their lack of experience, couldn't have anything to do with their lack of talent. It was a spiritual disability.
Right.
They were spiritually disabled, and he needed to fix them spiritually so that they could be good filmmakers. So he came up with Superpower. That's where it originally came from, as a way for him to handle the spiritual deficits of these amateur filmmakers so that they could make good films. So basically all he did was he took the list of perceptions, 52 of them in Scientology. Hubbard believed
Sailing content.
Yeah, there's not just it's like 7 senses, right? Sight, touch, smell, whatever, but there's 52. And he basically said to come up with drills that would allow a person to like focus on each one of these and drill them, right? So that's all he said. There's no tech behind it. So we came up with drills, right? So
I did not know any of this stuff.
yeah, they
that you're
spent
telling
2
me.
years. they hired like a B-level amusement company that designed amusement park attractions and tried to get them to do a bunch of them.
Wow.
And then after giving them a couple $1 million and they failed, they came to me and said, "Oh, you need to help us fix this." And so I spent a lot of time figuring out, like we would do things like there was this really wonderful drill. There was like a car, you were in a dark tunnel. I mean, they should open this up to the public and just charge $20 ticket and let people go through it, because it's really fun stuff. It's like stuff you'd find at an amusement park.
Are you talking about at the Superpower today, or what they might have made it
No,
into?
right now at the Flag Building. Like they should just open it up and let people like go through, not the auditing part of it, but on the 5th floor where they have all the fun stuff. But like, okay, there's this darkened tunnel, right? It's completely dark, and you sit in a car, like it's just like a little go-kart, like it's just a little cage that moves back and forth slowly on the track, right? But then on the walls of the tunnel, there's lights that are directional. They'll move in one direction or another direction. Then you're surrounded by 3 high-definition screens, and then they have images on them that can trick you into thinking you're going backward when you're going forward.
What
Like
the
completely fool you. And then what you have to do is drill your body position. In other words, knowing whether you're moving or the visual cue that you're seeing is tricking you into moving. And it's really fun stuff. It's
That
just
sounds like a complete mind fuck, though. Whatever.
no, it's not. It's completely, you can do it. You can
Okay.
do it.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that
That
you're a
sounds
god. It doesn't mean that you have some superpower. It just means that it's just like a guy who learns to walk a tightrope. He's so focused on his balance that he's taught himself to walk a tightrope. But that's all the superpower stuff is. It's just focusing one thing until you can like, oh yeah, I really got this. But it's just like all you know how. It's like like that thing I told you about. It's an optical illusion. So you really think you're moving one way when you're moving the other. And if you really, really concentrate on it, you eventually can detect, oh, I know which way I'm moving. And it's actually a lot of fun. I mean, the fact that that is ascribed to a spiritual, that's funny.
It's ridiculous.
Moves on the track. Is this the whole track? No, this
Yeah.
is only about 40
some
feet
funny
long.
commenters.
So yeah.
It does sound like a cool amusement
yeah.
park ride, though, man.
Uh-oh. What's happening? Are the comments like spinning out
Oh,
of
they always
control?
make great, clever little comments, and they're just banter amongst each other. SP equals superpowers.
Well, in terms of the whole track comment, like the whole track is not a real thing, but the 40-foot track in superpower is.
Of course, it's a real physical thing. You can put your things on.
Yeah,
but
so there was just a bunch. There was a bunch of trolls like that. But anyway, so yeah, I worked with a bunch of people. So
can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
You
I froze
for a
again.
moment.
God, I'm gonna have to get this figured out. But I will take care of the camera. I think we might be having a dead battery. Anyways, we've been going. But
yeah,
let me throw you a question that you can jump on while you stand by. So let's see. Do you guys have any questions that you would like to ask Mitch? Please throw them out now. Let's see. There's a whole bunch of clever comments in here, man. I got some pinned too.
Okay, cool.
I always thought there were quite a lot of similarities between Stanislavski acting school and Scientology's approach. Maybe Hubbard stole a lot from Stanislavski.
Nothing.
All right, you take it from there. I'm going to go fix the camera.
Nothing. Because Hubbard, Stanislavski's approach was essentially what they call method acting, which is when you're drawing upon your own experience and your own personality. And Hubbard's was based on what's called a mock-up or imagination, where you create that thing. So it was much more along the line of classic British theater teaching, not that it was like it, but that he didn't steal anything from Stanislavski. He didn't. I mean, he just made some shit up about the kind of aligned with Scientology principles. So I hope that answers your question. But it was basically forbidden because he thought it was psychiatrically influenced. Anybody else? Yeah, he was on the ship at the early years of CC. How many celebrities I've met? I don't know. I've met everybody in Scientology, so I don't think there's an. I mean, I either worked with them, or I met them, or I was introduced to them, or it's just like because I was just in that position. So I'm trying to think if there was anybody that I didn't meet. Or, I'd meet them at events or, stuff. Miscavige would introduce me to them, or I'd introduce myself or whatever. So, Jenny Linson stories. Yeah, there's a really good Jenny Linson story in my book, but you're gonna have to buy it to get the story. That's funny that you asked, because I knew Jenny since she was a little girl. Her aunt was a costumer who's married to what's his name? Mark Isham, the trumpet player. And I knew Jenny's mom really well, who joined the Sea Org. And I never really had run-ins with Jenny, although she was noted for being pretty nasty to people. But when I was working on the CCHR museum, she was kind of writing me kind of hard, because I was under such a heavy deadline. And she kept saying, you're it, Mitch, you're it. David Miscavige is counting on you, you're it. And one day I did say to her, if you say I'm it one more time, I'm going to shove your head through a wall. And that's really a mean thing to say. And I would never do that. And I'm not that kind of a person, but I'm kind of proud of having said it to Jenny, because she was so nasty to so many people. Yeah, I'm not sure what technique you're talking about. Yeah, great content about Jenny Linson. I didn't interact with her that much. I mean, a lot of those guys kind of steered clear of me, because I was in good stead with Miscavige, and I was doing films and stuff. So they kind of didn't mess with me. Hey, Doug, you're back.
I'm so sorry to leave you forever. I'm just gonna have to go with this shitty one on the whatever what I'm using now. This one won't crash, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But you're
so sorry about that, man.
You're young and handsome enough to pull it off, so I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, I even have a diffusion filter on my lens. Just
this thing looks terrible, the lighting and everything, but at least we won't have any problems. All I need, guys, is somebody to spend an hour with me and run a live, so that I can actually figure all this shit out, rather than using it on my guests, because I know I can get it to work. It's just I'm having problems. And he's back. Okay, Mitch. So I'm sorry to get off track with the superpower stuff.
Yeah, no problem.
But it was absolutely fascinating. But we are talking about basically how actors in particular not only get stuck to Scientology, but why they stay with it. I'll tell you, I mean, like I said, from my perspective, until I woke up out of this thing, it's just, it was that ego trip. It was the tools that I felt like we were learning. Like at the Actors Center, what I understood is they were teaching people, well, you even mentioned it the other day, I think, when we were chatting, that they have these different cards where you select beingness on one card, and then you select a tone level that you're to act it out at, etc. And it seemed like there were these amazing theater games that were special because they came from Hubbard, man, and they came from this tech that I had been kind of brainwashed into.
And they weren't psychiatrically motivated like supposedly
the
Stanislavski was. And then people like to point at Lee Strasberg, who was in that Stanislavski line, as being really evil. I mean, a lot of his students kind of had mental emotional breakdowns, like Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
So
I think Hubbard even mentioned that he audited Marilyn Monroe at some point, or tried to get on the lot to audit her. I don't know if you've heard that.
No, but it wouldn't surprise me.
When you do you want to talk a little bit about how would you handle it when people would leave the cult? We had Larry Anderson that left. We had Jason Begay that left. What was your personal reaction when you saw these Scientologists that you would work with on the set suddenly leave? Did that start you questioning? And then also,
No,
what was the reshoot processes like when you had to go find somebody to replace people?
It didn't really. I mean, Jason was kind of a special case because we hung out a lot, and I really liked him, and I respected his decision to leave. I mean, look, here's the thing. Well, Jason was one of the most intense. He was an incredibly intense person. When I met him, he all of a sudden he was like, we were shooting in a studio in LA. We were having to rent studios because the studio at Gold was too small and we hadn't built the big studio yet. So we were shooting at some studio in the Valley, and Jason came by there to just meet me. And he just gotten into Scientology. He was just letting me know, I'm super excited and I want to be in film, Scientology films, blah, blah, blah. He went up to, I believe, OT5, at least OT3, at least, or possibly OT5.
I think it was OT5.
Yeah. And he became what's called a class 5 intern auditor. Okay. And which is a pretty decent level of training. For most Scientologists, never do that, especially celebrities.
It's true, because he really wanted to go.
With the exception of Tom Cruise, who's probably, I don't know if he's intern classified, but I know he's at least on his academy levels. Yeah, because he ended up at Gold when I was up there. So I remember when he was auditing Mark Edley, he was training as an auditor. But here's my point. Jason went in record time up the bridge. He was really committed. And so when he made the decision to leave, I was like, holy moly. He wasn't like some lightweight who just dabbled and then said, screw this, it's bullshit. He really immersed himself in it before he ever made that decision. And I respected him for leaving. And what he did in terms of making it right. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Jason went to Texas, dug up Marty Rathman, who at that point was just a miserable, broken person who was probably just drunk every day, and dusted him off and said, you need to, get going. And I think it was Jason that originally got Marty going as an activist and as, delivering his own brand of Scientology. I kind of pretty sure that that's how it went down. Of course, then eventually Jason, he squared it up. He squared the whole thing up with it. He was good. He left. He was done. He'd done what he needed to do to leave. He went off with his career and he became very successful. So, and I respected that. Larry, I kind of got, Larry was pressured. So much pressure on him to do Scientology stuff. Like when he did Orientation, which was going to be a public film, right? Not just an internal film, but it was going to be shown. He
For
was
the
like,
public, really? That was going to be a public film. I didn't know that.
It is a public film. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they show it to all the newbies that come in. What do you mean?
It's a public film.
Okay. It's the first thing people see.
Yeah, it's a public film. In other words, you don't have to be signed up on something to see it. Okay.
I see.
Even though you see that as part of us before you're allowed to sign up on anything. When Larry was told it was wanted for him to be in that film, he became very concerned because there's a thing, and you probably know this as an actor, there's a very important thing when you're at that point in your career where you really have to watch out what you're associated with because it can literally destroy you. For instance, back when I was directing commercials, there's a thing actors have called a conflict. You know what that is, right? So in other words, if you did a Ford ad, you ain't going out auditioning for a Chevy ad for at least a year, because the advertisers are going to go, no, you did there's this, because it's so easy to associate a face in one thing with something else. And Larry was very concerned. He was at a point in his career where he was doing a lot of TV and he was doing commercials. He was up for maybe got a big game show, and it was like he couldn't afford to be known as, it didn't matter that it was Scientology. He couldn't afford to be known as a spokesperson for any religious group or ideological group. It just would have been like career poison for him, right? So of course he got handled to do it because Miscavige was like screaming like, "Oh, he's just PTS," just the way he had of doing that shit. And Larry got talked into doing it. So,
wow, I didn't know that.
They really like so he became very disgruntled because he never felt he achieved any actual benefit from all the money he spent. So he just said, fuck it, I'm out of here. So, did it bother me? I mean, I had to reshoot a couple of films for the orientation one. We didn't mind reshooting because it was such a disaster because it had the, jump off a bridge or blow out your brains line.
Was that kept in, Mitch?
No. No.
That got cut, eh?
Okay, so you know how you can't change anything that L. Ron Hubbard never wrote? Well, unless you're David Miscavige, he changes shit. Like he changes Hubbard's words like more often than he probably changes underwear. I'm telling you. And
I
that
believe
guy,
you.
He probably changes underwear twice a day because some legal cases probably making him shit in his pants. But anyway, he changed shit all the time. So, yeah, that's fantastic. I just saw this thing about Jason's interview.
I think his interview helped out a lot of people, Catherine. I remember, I've watched that at least 10, maybe 15 times.
Yeah,
it's an incredible interview. And you can see him, Mitch, like decompressing and figuring it all
totally.
out.
When I saw it, I was like,
what?
I totally get it. This is what he had to do to leave. That's the only way to do it. It's the reason that I started speaking out. You have to do it, or you're never going to be whole again. So anyway, but when Larry left, I mean, I ran into him. Unfortunately, I ran into him some years ago when I was still in, and he was like, Mitch, like he was really happy to see me. And I was on the phone and I was like, what do I say to this guy? So I didn't really talk to him. I mean, I was walking into a restaurant on my cell phone. So I just went, oh, hey, hi. But I'm sorry I didn't talk with him. Larry was a really good guy. All these people who left, they were all good guys. Except. And so you mentioned Danny Masterson. I mean, here's an interesting tidbit. I don't know if it was the first film he starred in, but it probably was one of the technical training films. Without going into great detail, but some years later, I did the film that Jason starred in, featured a character, and I know others have spoken about this, so I was the first one to notice it and mention it, and then other people spoke out about it. I had written about it in my book, but the moment that I heard about when the Danny Masterson case broke, first thing I thought of was this technical training film that I directed with Jason Begay, where Jason played this person. It was actually a science fiction film, took place in the future, and he was like marooned on a planetoid and by his partner and picked up by a shift, and a spaceship, and your old acting teacher Bobby Lyons was in it, and Jeffrey Lewis was in it, and Jason Begay. Anyway, so that it turns out the chaplain on the patrol craft is an auditor. So they give the Jason character a session, and it turns out that the reason he was marooned is because he drugged and raped his partner's girlfriend. And so he gets an auditing session, and then he cleans it up, and he's all happy at the end. And he's like, I'm going to go find that girl and get her some auditing, and I'm going to find my old friend and get him some auditing. And nothing, like a guy never gets in trouble. Nobody goes to the cops. Nobody says, and it's literally like in the scriptures of Scientology is embedded the idea that Scientology has the power to take a criminal and reform him, and thereby the authorities are not needed because the power is so great. But what it actually does, if you look at, Masterson, is it blames the victims and then protects the perpetrators. And if you look at that film that's used to train auditors, it helps them come to believe that the power of their technology is so great that you would be stupid to call the authorities. That just blew my mind. Yeah, when I really realized this film that I'd done, I mean, what is it saying? Nobody says, okay, so great. Thanks for telling us you drugged and raped this girl. We are going to have to report you to the authorities. We like for some reason, it was just like, whatever. They ended up at the end of the film, they all get together with the Jason Begay character and they just sing a folk song. Like, we're all buddies now. Everything's just hunky-dory.
That's amazing, Mitch. And like you said, you don't really realize it when you're inside. Because I thought that the auditing fixed everything. So why do we need to go to the authorities? We have the tech, government's evil. But I
Yeah,
didn't realize until you just explained that it's justifying and it's inculcated into our minds
right.
that we don't have to
Totally.
report even rapes. Mitch, I had a guy named Mitch or Chris Malin on, and he was a top
Yeah, I
auditor in
saw
the
him. Yeah,
UK, and he was covering this stuff up, but people don't understand what's going on in our head. It's so clear
right.
when you just described it with that film,
Yeah.
but when I believed in the auditing and that the tech fixes all, it all made sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do exactly. Let's just say, here's a little mental experiment. Let's just say that there was a technology that was so powerful, and an organization that was so perfectly good intended that it could take somebody like Danny Masterson and actually reform him, and then it could take his his victims and help them and counsel them to handle their trauma so that everybody was okay. This is what Scientology promises, and you can see it in that film. Even the part about going and handling the victims, where the Jason Begay character says, "And I'm going to go find her, and I'm going to give her some auditing," right? But what really happens is the opposite, the exact opposite, where they terrorize the victim, they blame them for what happened, and they protect the perpetrator. So it's like, and it's literally the basis of it is in a technical training film that's used to train Scientology auditors. And it's in such a subtle fashion that you miss it. And it's just, you're, as you say, inculcated. You are just brainwashed into believing this.
The subtlety is what's so weird. I contend, Mitch, that we're under hypnosis or a spell by doing those drills, the TRs
Yeah.
and everything, because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
makes such
Absolutely.
sense when you describe it. Clearly, we're protecting the victim. We have the policies that are written where you can't go to the police, and it all made sense when I was inside,
Right.
but only within that bubble. When you come out, it's
Right.
horrifying. And
Right.
Jason obviously didn't say anything about that particular film. He didn't notice at that time while in the bubble with the rest of us that, oh my God, we're protecting rape victims literally in that film.
Well, I think it took a lot of us. I think it took a whole reckoning. Like
Really?
yeah, because I never would have recognized that except for the Danny Masterson trial,
Right,
because
right.
I'd done a film with Danny when he was 15 years old, and I knew him, and he was such a narcissistic little whatever. I mean,
Really?
yeah,
Even at that time?
he was just, oh yeah, he was like exhausting to be around, because he was just, he was always the center of attention, always on, always, just, he was a little 15-year-old narcissist, but he was a committed actor, and he did a really good job for me. So I could excuse the whole thing. But so then years later, I did this film with Jason when I first read the script, where the spaceman, tells the auditor that he drugged his partner's girlfriend and raped her, I was just like really taken aback, because I was like, why did Hubbard pick that? It could have been anything. It could have been
I know.
it could have been like I poisoned my grandmother. It could have been like
Anything other than that, you know?
yeah. Why did he pick drugging
Because it
and
was coming from his own
raping?
fucking mind, dude,
Yeah,
and the things that he did with his kids and
it's
mates that
weird.
were around him.
Yeah, it
It's
was
like
weird.
Scientology is
Yeah,
just a big projection of Hubbard's megalomaniac, insane mind, basically, and trying to get others to live out his fantasy to then justify it so they wouldn't throw him in a loony bin.
yeah, I guess. But it always it was. I always found it very troubling. So I think I directed the film twice, and I think I did it very tastefully in terms of how the rape
Jesus,
was.
how did you do it, Mitch? I mean, did you kind
You
of dodge
saw it,
around
didn't
that a
you?
little bit? I don't.
Oh well, no.
Which one was it?
It's called TR9, The Session. It's called The Session.
Do you have to be on Academy level 2 or something like that to hit that one?
I probably.
Okay, I swear
No,
I did
actually,
remember
I
that one.
don't think it shows up until the what's called the Grad 5 internship.
I definitely didn't make it that far on the training.
Yeah,
I
Jason
think I
Begay
would have
did.
remembered that. That's amazing, by the way. He co-audited Mitch, as you know. He took right to it. He got into it through Bodie Elfman at the frickin' Beverly Hills Playhouse
Yeah,
that we were
yeah,
talking about earlier.
yeah.
And he was
Jason
in.
was one of the most gung ho Scientologists I'd ever
I
met.
saw him around. I saw him around the org, Mitch,
Yeah.
and he brought in his wife, who he was always trying to get to push up the bridge because she wasn't as dedicated, and he was always hovering over her, helping her out. You could just
Yeah,
tell
what's
he
her
was intent.
Angie, right? Her name was
I don't
Angie.
remember her wife's
Yeah,
name.
her name
But
was
she's
Angie. They met.
beautiful.
Met.
She seemed disinterested while Jason's all trying
No,
to
she
get
was
the dictionaries for her and shit.
yeah, she was like.
I think she was just kind of doing it because Jason was, because as soon as
I don't know.
Jason left, or in other words, when Jason dropped it, she had no problem dropping it right with him, to my understanding, because she wasn't as hardcore, but not many people were as hardcore as Jason.
They met
like
on one of our shoots, I have to tell you.
No shit. Which film?
No, it wasn't I'm trying to think. It was I'm trying to think. It wasn't a tech film. It was one of the public films. It was some, I don't remember, but it was, they met.
That was the place to hook up.
Yeah. What's his name? Grant Cardone met his wife on one of my shoots.
Which, a gold film as well?
We were doing, we right after Grant Cardone got into Scientology, we were desperately looking for a spokesperson for a Dynamics what do you call them? The fucking sales thing, the infomercial, and he was doing a lot of. He was like a speaker back then. He did all the.
Right.
I guess he still is. Whatever.
He was a kind of a motivational speaker.
Yeah, he was a motivational speaker. So we hired him. We were so desperate. I hired him to be the spokesperson for a Dynamics infomercial. The whole thing blew up. I mean, it didn't blow up, but it never got used because it was just, we shot the whole thing and then it never got used. So it was just, I think it tested poorly. I think people didn't like Grant.
Really? What's not to like about Grant?
Because he came off like because people that serve in the focus groups, they thought he came off like a used car salesman.
He absolutely does. He absolutely does.
Yeah.
You can tell he's a scam artist just by his whole presentation and the way he puts himself together.
He's a very successful one. I mean,
do you think he'll wind up in prison at some point or be convicted for fraud or any kind of scamish?
I don't know. I couldn't say. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I don't know enough about the case or whatever. It's just like.
Me neither. It just seems like he's running a bit of a kind of pyramid scheme type thing, but we shall see.
Well, he wouldn't.
It's only speculation. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just. There's a certain aspect of Scientology that makes one feel that they can get away with things.
And not only that, Mitch, they teach us, I'm thinking of Reed Slotkin and other people that would form kind of scams, right? Because we're getting scammed ourselves. And if we believe in Hubbard tech, we might take the ideas and try to create our own unconscious version of what we're taught how to scam people in Scientology. Does that make any sense at all?
I don't know. I mean, I've heard that it's easier to scam a scammer than it is an honest person, but I think that's just anecdotal.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, I don't really know. That it's kind of one of these, these rules of thumb that nobody knows where they come from. Yeah.
Do you know when Grant Cardone when he joined Scientology? What year that would have been? Annette asks.
I'm really bad with years. I think Mark Headley would probably remember because we worked with him together on that thing. I think that was in the early 2000s. I know he got in San Diego. He was living in La Jolla and sold his house in La Jolla, moved to LA, was very gung-ho, was living at the Celebrity Center, at the Manor Hotel rather. And that's when we met him. Yeah. Then he met Elena. They got married, and he bought some rock star's house in the Hollywood Hills. Can't remember his name, but anyway, he's whatever. We hung out a lot. We were friends for a while. I mean, he was like, as much as you could be friends with a Grant, because we were very different people.
There's not too many people like him.
Well, he was one of these guys that obviously didn't grow up with money. And
that's right. And he was addicted to drugs.
And so, yeah, but I don't think that had anything to do with that. I think that was just a lot of people were doing coke in those days.
Okay.
But I think sometimes people who don't grow up with money and then they come into a lot of money, they tend to live very garish lifestyles. Like they tend to use the trappings of wealth to kind of overly decorate their lives. And Grant is kind of one of those kind of people. Like I remember because we hung out a lot. Like I smoked back then. And I would always use these like disposable lighters because I'm not going to buy a fucking Cartier lighter. I'm going to lose it. Like I can't keep a lighter for more than 5 minutes. And I'm not like a status oriented person. But Grant Like he always had to have a Dunhill lighter, gold-plated Cartier lighter.
Of course.
And then he'd make fun of you. Like, what are you doing with that piece of shit lighter? Here, I'll give you a Cartier lighter. And I'd be like, dude, it was just so fucking annoying. So he was kind of like that, you know, he was really statusy,
Definitely.
you know, like, yeah, it just bugged me. He was, so he's, anyway.
Got a couple of questions here, my man. From Apollo Zero. How do you think Scientology actors deal with their film or TV shows bombing or not getting jobs if they believe their success is coming from Scientology? Good question. How do they rationalize these failures? I immediately think of Elizabeth Moss and The Handmaid's Tale, but that was a successful show. So I wonder if they attributed their success to Scientology as well. What do you think?
Oh, there's another one. I think the first time, this is so funny. The first time Elizabeth Moss ever went on camera professionally was for me. So, but
really?
She would never remember it. She was 6 years old.
6 years old?
Yeah, I needed a cute little kid for some anti-psych ad. And so I just needed a little girl. So I shot her and, I remembered that and watching her grow up and become a star. She's very talented.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This is a very odd question because I don't know.
I'm just trying to think what I would
I don't think there's that literal a question. I think Apollo Zero, I think you're trying to maybe make a very literal connection between these two things, but
I hear what you're saying, Mitch.
Yeah, but I don't think people would walk in and would bomb or not get a show and then think Scientology failed me or otherwise.
Because we have no idea we're in a cult, Apollo. We don't know that casting directors are talking behind our backs. I didn't know any of this stuff. You know, my friends would snicker about me being in Scientology, Mitch, and I'm sure that there's probably some casting sessions I walked out and they go, oh, this guy's a fucking Scientologist, Skip, I'm sure I missed a lot of things. I was proud to be a Scientologist. I thought sometimes I would even proselytize in the casting sessions. I'm sure that didn't help for the job. I didn't know, man.
Yeah,
I thought it was great.
Yeah. Well, there came a time, there was a time back in the 90s, especially, and then into the early 2000s, where you could talk about Scientology to strangers. Like it happened to me all the time because people would say, what do you do? So it was impossible to avoid. So, I could either lie and quote, John Waters and say, I supply babies to lesbian couples or just something stupid, or just to avoid the conversation, I'd say, oh, well, I direct films for Scientology. And I watched this go from, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Tell me more, to, oh, stewardess, can I change my seat? So it was just like you literally watched it happen where the reputation of Scientology just sank and sank and sank. And like,
it's definitely a good time not to be a Scientologist celebrity, because back in the heyday, especially when you were kind of working, right, Mitch, there was a lot more stars. Do you think it's on the downward spiral? Do you think that they're going to have or are having a lot more time attracting people despite the Actors Center and such being out there? How do you think they're doing nowadays attracting celebrities?
Oh, I have no idea. I doubt that they're attracting anybody, celebrities or otherwise. I mean, why would anybody join Scientology today?
True, but did they get anybody semi-new, a C-level or B-level actor or anything right before you were getting out?
No, you'd have to be right on the ground to know that. And
I see.
Yeah, absolutely not. I don't think they're getting anybody. I think they've got I recently got a publication from them. They don't send me mail anymore, but
really,
yeah, but I recently got a really glossy spread. It was about 100 people, the wealthiest people in Scientology. They'd invited them all on some kind of a trip to Italy to look at some. It was like a luxury 5-star fucking thing that was to somehow celebrate the upcoming, launch of the L. Ron Hubbard Hall in Clearwater. They want to build this auditorium. And I looked at this photo. I should have scanned it and shown it. And there's at least 50 people or more. And these people are all fabulously wealthy, multi-millionaires. And these are the people that are, they give money. It's this very, hermetically sealed bubble. There's a bunch of very wealthy people in there. They got $3 billion in reserves, and they own a ton of land. So they don't need, I mean, they don't need to get new people to survive.
No, they don't. But it would
Yeah,
be nice if
plus
they.
it's a joke. It's like, where is Shelley? It's like on the Golden Globes. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is
That's probably
just,
why Tom Cruise shut up about it, because he learned in 2005-ish to shut up about it when Spielberg had a problem with him. And so nobody's really spoken out too much about it since then. Not even Travolta, who
no. And Kirsty's gone. She would probably speak up about it because she liked
she
to
was definitely
speak
one of the
up.
most vocal, man. That's sad
Yeah.
about her. I wonder if
Yeah.
she was didn't she die of cancer or something, Mitch?
Yeah.
Or maybe she put off the treatment. A lot of Scientologists, especially
Maybe, I don't
OTs.
know. I mean, I know people who went to the doctor probably more than they should, and they weren't Scientologists, and they got lung cancer and died 3 weeks later. I mean, sometimes it just goes down that way. It doesn't matter how.
True, but
And
there are
she didn't refuse any kind of treatment. She was actively receiving treatment. So it does look. I don't want to sound like an apologist for Scientology's
I
lack of.
understand, man.
Yeah, but I'm very much committed to defeating Scientology on truth alone. So
Yeah,
without,
exactly. Without
yeah,
making stuff up.
yeah. So I don't know, because nobody ever will be able to correlate, to draw a correlation between Scientology and the numbers of people in Scientology that die of cancer versus the general public. I can tell you from working at Gold for all those years, which is a pretty small cohort if you're going to talk about a research project, but I can tell you that there was a lot more divorces and it seemed like a lot more people dying of cancer at Gold than in the general population.
Really?
It seemed that way. Well, definitely divorces, because you can't date. So
Mm-hmm.
if you want to get on with somebody, you got to marry them. So to them, marriage is like dating.
It's true. They get married at 15 and kind of underage too, right? Is that allowed in the
Yeah, well,
Sea Org
there's
numbers?
nobody underage. There's nobody underage at Gold. They're having
Well,
kids.
maybe not at Gold, but it
Yeah,
was
I know.
common for Sea Org members to be
Well, yeah,
15
if
and
you,
marry a 19-year-old or something,
yeah,
right?
yeah, or even older. Yeah, that happens a lot because it's like,
Is that
it's,
legal, by the way? I mean, how would
well,
they actually get married
in
if they're under?
California, yeah, you can get married. I think the age of consent for marriage, maybe you have to have your parents' permission or something, is 16. In some
I
states,
thought it was 18. You guys in the
I don't
audience know
know.
if
I don't
California is
know.
18 or is it 16? Yeah. Irregardless, they didn't really give a fuck. I mean, there was constantly, older gentlemen usually hooking up with younger ladies. Because like you said, it's just like dating. It doesn't really matter. It's just the second dynamic and there's 8 more to go, right?
Yeah,
Of which the third is the most important. It's all about the group, right? Not really. Isn't that amazing? We get into it for self-advancement, but it's really about the group. That's where the cultic control comes in. It's all about servicing the group.
Yeah.
Mitch, is there anything that you wanted to touch upon that we didn't hit upon about, how actors get roped into Scientology? Any tidbits that you want to share, or do you feel like we kind of covered that, how that whole thing works?
Well, I think we did. I mean, I think especially Celebrity Center in LA, I think because there's such a strong, this little micro community
Mm-hmm.
at Celebrity Center, that I think it's very attractive to people because you can, especially if you're from out of town, you don't know
I was just going to
anybody,
say that.
and you
It's
think you can
perfect for that.
network and you can get to know people, and you have people you can hang out with that are like-minded. So I think that's a very attractive quality.
Do you think from your experience that this is such a terrible question, but I just want to know what you have to say, because I don't want to encourage anybody to get into Scientology for connections or because it will help their career. Do you think that if a newbie came to town, that Scientology could give them a foot in the door, connections with casting directors, or some kind of placebo effect confidence that would help them in their career?
Absolutely not.
Thank you for saying
I think
that.
it's a kiss of death. I think it's an absolute kiss of death. I mean, I think there's someone I know who was a friend of mine, who's a relatively working casting director in LA, but
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine that she would even want to connect her Scientology to her career, because it's a bad idea right now to do that. I mean, it's just
Definitely.
yeah, and it's getting worse. It's just like, it's not game over. Scientology is going to be around forever.
That's what I think so too. I don't get super excited when someone says the end of Scientology, but it's awesome all the things that are happening. We know Danny Masterson has really changed the game, but we got a long ways to go to really take their power away. But it's dwindling, don't you think, Mitch? I mean, compared to
no, absolutely it is. But with their money and especially this kind of group of people that exist within Scientology that are just make a ton of money and are willing to give money. They can go for a long time. I mean, there's lots of little religions that should have. I mean, look at the Seventh-day Adventists. I mean, but they're like a pretty decent group of people, but they had a really rocky, horrible start. It's just like back. They were one of these like 1800s religions like Mormonism, and they
still going
but
strong.
Today they will run one of the best teaching hospitals in all of America, and the blue zones where people live to be 100, the most people live to be 100 in 7 areas around the world. They're referred to as the blue zones. Yeah, one's in Okinawa, one's in the Caucasus Mountains in Russia, one is out in Ontario, in San Bernardino County, in a group of Seventh-day Adventists. Loma Linda is one of the content. But anyway, so that's a little off the point. But there's a lot of religions that should have just died out, like Seventh-day Adventists, but they didn't. They sort of got real small, and then they carried on, and then they sort of stabilized, and they do their thing, and So Scientology is always going to be around. It's like it's just,
I know. I think you're right.
Even if it's just 15
Small.
people, it's just always going to be around. They have so much money and property and people that are willing to support it, who are convinced that they have secrets, that they have not secrets, but knowledge that separates them and makes them special, to which they have an obligation to preserve that knowledge and spread it.
So whether or not Scientology goes away or not, we're always going to have a new quote unquote Scientology, because it seems like the human condition to need to believe exactly like you just said, man. It's really depressing, actually.
Yeah, it's just hopefully it'll be made, it'll have
minimized.
Its teeth and its claws will be removed, and it's not going to be able to get away with destroying families.
I hope so, man.
Yeah, because it's just like, what they say, believe what you want, but what you do is a whole different matter.
The thing is, though, Mitch, on that, your actions come from your beliefs. So if you believe in Hubbard, you're going to act a certain way. So they're not totally inseparable, but I get the point. I get the point.
Yeah.
What they need to do is stop abusing people, and their tax exempt status needs to be removed because they're a business, and they could be criminally prosecuted for all the crimes that they have, whether that's financial or otherwise. So if we could just stop the abuse, people can practice Scientology all they want. It's the institutionalized abuse. It's somebody walking on Hollywood Boulevard that's from out of town that's going to get roped into an alternate reality like you did because they just innocently got pulled in to do the personality test. It's that kind of vulture culture thing that I think we could go for to get rid of. But there's always going to be Scientologists. And if not, there's going to be believers and other fringe groups. But it's the damage that they've done that's illegal and needs to go, man.
Absolutely. I always forget of his name, and I'm sure one of your viewers will be able to put it in the chat. There was a Greek philosopher who said that character is destiny.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Your character is your destiny.
Yeah. So I think we could easily comprehend David Miscavige's destiny.
Good point, man.
Yeah,
and I've also heard another quote, Mitch, where evil contains within it the seeds of its own destruction.
Yeah.
So it's going to be limited, right?
Yeah.
Anybody's reign.
Yeah. He's not. I don't know how much longer he's going to be able to keep doing what he's doing.
Do you think he'll go try to hide out when the shit really hits the fan? And
I think if he was truly threatened with arrest or with a scenario like that might end up in his imprisonment, which is highly, highly, highly unlikely.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I think because I mean, there's no criminal complaints against him right now. They're all civil.
Yeah.
So he's not going to jail for any of that stuff. But I think if anything came to that, I think he has the resources to disappear and to control Scientology without anybody knowing where he is.
Just like Hubbard did, right? In
Yeah.
Creston Ranch. I mean, he lived out
Well,
the rest
even
of
on
his
the
life.
Apollo, I mean, to
Right.
some degree, it's like
What they really
international
couldn't.
waters.
They really couldn't find him, Mitch. I mean, they couldn't find him on Creston Ranch. They couldn't have found him on the ship. I mean, really, why couldn't they just go arrest the frickin' guy? They were looking for him. Like, was he that hard to find?
Yeah, I don't. But I don't. There weren't criminal complaints against him. He was an unindicted co-conspirator.
Yeah, he weaseled his way out of that too. I mean, clearly he was behind that. It wouldn't have taken a rocket scientist to figure that out. But they allowed his wife to take the fall and many others.
Yeah.
He just always seemed to get away, is what I'm saying. I mean, he lived the rest of his life without any jail time. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Mitch, why don't we take a few questions, man, before we roll out? And do you feel like we covered or what we wanted to cover in this particular broadcast? Are we missing anything?
No, I'm sure we brought up more than we covered, but I think we've covered it. And
dude,
if we didn't
I
cover
had
it,
my mind blown on the tidbits that you dropped in here, man. You're just a wealth of knowledge. It's absolutely incredible what you've been through, and I feel like we haven't even started. Mitch, when's your book coming out, my man? You want to tell people anything about that? Because I bet you people will really want to read it.
Yeah, everybody needs to buy it because I don't know how I'm paying my rent next month. So.
I feel you will hurry up and get it done, man. When are we going to see it?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just finishing it up. I got the final edit notes from editors. I have a couple of very gifted editors that are helping me, and the design is being wrapped up, and then we'll get it formatted. I'm hoping before the end of September for sure.
September. I can't wait to read that. Are you going to start from the beginning of your story, or do
no,
you just
not
cover Scientology, or what do you?
Yeah, no, it actually starts. It's weird. It starts when I was about 15, growing up in the whole rock and roll drug soaked Laurel Canyon, Hollywood Hills scene. And I didn't start it there when I first was writing, and then I realized that if people don't sort of know who you are, they don't really give a crap about what happened to you. They kind of have to have some concept of what you are when you get in this problem. You have this problem and you walk into Scientology. And plus it was during such a formative time.
Mm-hmm.
I was a teenager and I witnessed the changing of the guard on the Sunset Strip from mobsters and movie stars to record moguls and rock stars. Like I saw that happen, and I went up to the Bay Area in 1967 to start professional art school, and it just so happened to be the summer of love and and I saw Jimi Hendrix and all. Yeah, so I kept sort of tracking with all these cultural shifts, and they had a big influence on me. So I wrote about a lot of that stuff.
That's so cool, man. I can't wait to hear that.
So and then that sort of all just flows into the Scientology thing. It's just like,
And the Laurel Canyon scene, because you grew up in that era, right?
Yeah, I did.
I mean, you were literally in Laurel Canyon.
Literally right in the middle of it. I mean, I grew up.
I'm so jealous. It's not fair, man.
Yeah,
I felt like that was supposed to be me, Mitch. The whole hippie, the whole Laurel Canyon vibe. I missed that by about a decade, man.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a teenager, we used to hear like the Byrds rehearsing on like Cass Elliott's back deck on a Sunday. Like literally, it was like that. It was really crazy.
Not fair.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a story. I wrote about how. The story about how I was 15 and I snuck into Ciro's on Sunset Strip. It's now the Comedy Store.
Oh, yeah.
I snuck into Ciro's to see the Byrds. I'd seen them there a bunch. But I snuck in there because that night there was this rumor that Bob Dylan was going to come out and play Mr. Tambourine Man with them, which he did. It was kind of this legendary show, and which I got to see. I mean, I was underage, and I snuck in. And I illegally drove a motorcycle there at night. So it was just crazy stuff. So
that's when you kids were all being rebellious and that's when all the cults sprang up and Scientology capitalized on it. You were all finding your calling. There was something more to life.
None of us were going to live to be 30.
Yeah.
We were just, like live fast, die young, and leave a beautiful corpse. So that was kind of the motto of the day.
Was that Morrison? Who said
no, that was, believe it or not, that was
I know that
from
quote,
a Humphrey
obviously.
Bogart film
No
called
shit.
Knock on Any Door with John Derek, Bo Derek's husband. He was a 19-year-old on trial for murder, and while he's on the stand, he says, he intended to live past die young and leave a beautiful corpse. Don't play film trivia against me ever.
Okay. Now
Yeah,
I'm thinking that was James Dean somehow. I
No,
don't
that was,
remember. I've heard that quote, of course.
yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
mind
it's
taking a
pretty
few
famous. Yeah, go ahead.
questions, Mitch, and
Yeah.
comments before we roll out of here?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think my dog can hold his pee a little bit longer.
Okay, we're almost done, man. Yeah, we've been
Okay.
going for 2
Go
hours.
ahead.
God, there's so much knowledge you dropped in this interview, man. Apologies for the technical difficulties. That sucked. Blow drill question. Did you know about the advices about CC and the purpose of celebrities?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was more than just advices. There was also some internal policy that, like all of the celebrities in later years, like once Miscavige took over, like any celebrities, especially the big ones like Isaac Hayes. We forgot to talk about Isaac. I was good friends with him. We did a film together. He's a great guy. But people like Isaac and Tom and whoever, any of those people, like any activities that they did to forward Scientology all had to be coordinated with RTC. They ostensibly coordinated through the president's office at CC, but really it would have to be, then that would have to be coordinated with RTC. So they were really run like none of them woke up one day and went, I think I'll go speak on behalf of this movement or that. But it was all very much laid out and controlled. So, but I'm not aware that there was like many Hubbard advices beyond the Project Celebrity, because that was kind of the thing that spelled it all out, was what their purpose of. But I know somewhere, and I did read, it was either a policy letter or an advice, which was the definition of celebrity, which had to do with celebrities and their entourages. And it was just essentially people in any community who were considered what they called the opinion leaders. Like if somebody was a strong opinion leader, it could be in business, it could be whatever, any form of art or broadcasting, but the person was looked at as for their opinion in the community, then they were considered a celebrity.
That's right. And we know why that is, because in order to save point or get somebody on your team or to save you if Scientology is talked about unfavorably or to talk good about Scientology, you just need to hit all the opinion leaders. And that kind of jumping off of what Blow Drill here says, how would they handle the celebrities, Mitch? Did you have any intel on that about like were John Travolta or Tom Cruise or even Jason Begay, were they hit up to do things for Scientology? Were they always kind of because of their celebrity, or were they left alone?
They couldn't be hit up directly ever, because that did happen for a while, where people would maybe have some pet project they were doing and they were thinking, I think I'll get some. Those people would get in ethics trouble because you were supposed to sort of leave them alone. And if you had something that you wanted them to do, you would have to go to the president at Celebrity Center and propose it to them, and then they would have to coordinate it. There were any direct contact with any of the celebrities for the purposes of doing something promotional or proselytizing or anything was absolutely forbidden. I mean, I can tell you, like when I decided to use Isaac Hayes in a tech film, I proposed it to Miscavige. The script that he was in, the character description was an old man with a white beard and a robe, like a wise old person, like a Gandalf without the hat.
A shaman, yeah.
No, more like a wizardy kind of, more like a wise, philosopher type, right? Less so than mystical. And so I thought, oh, fuck it. I want to use Isaac Hayes because I knew Isaac and he's such a lovely man. And so I proposed that, and plus he was an African king. Like a lot of people don't know it, but he was descendant of royalty from Ghana, and he had gone back to Ghana. Yeah, he'd gone back to Ghana and become a king. And I'd seen him in his robes. I don't know, my camera went out of focus. I'd seen him in
over here.
Okay, good. I'd seen him in his robes, and I thought, oh, well, that's how I want him in the film. So, we made this
Right,
beautiful costume for him. But my point is when we cast him for the thing, he was living in New York. So it was a real rigmarole. Like I had to propose it to Miscavige, and he said, absolutely. So then once that approval was given, then he had to be in it. We contacted Isaac. He was doing a radio show in New York at the time. And it was a big commitment, 5 days a week, and he couldn't get out of the radio show. So Tommy Davis, who was working at Celebrity Center then, he was like a celebrity wrangler. Tommy would get on a plane on Friday and fly to New York, and then he'd fly back on Friday night with Isaac, and they'd practice. He'd run his lines with him on the plane, because there's a lot of films you can ad lib your lines, but in a Hubbard film, you had to be very exact.
That's right.
You couldn't change them. So yeah, that's how we did it. But it was very coordinated. So I think it took us like maybe 3 weekends, like maybe 6 full days, or maybe 4 weekends to shoot all his stuff. But it was, it was like intense for everybody, including Isaac. But we had to go through a bunch of things. Like I couldn't just call him up.
Understandably so, because I'm sure they were getting hit up a bunch. And
yeah,
they quickly had to nip that in the butt.
Yeah, it was kind of for their own good, just to kind of keep everything under control. But
one final.
They wanted them to be very much aligned with the plans and programs of upper management, not just local little bullshit.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. One final question, Mitch, if you don't mind, before we roll out of here. Do you mind?
No, go ahead.
Okay, this is from One Love. Hey, One Love, how are you? Question for Mitch. Were you close to anybody when you were in Scientology, and have any of them come into the real world since you left? That's a really good question.
Well, yes and no. Yes, I was close to people in Scientology. I have said this before. Nobody has friends in Scientology. The idea of a friend doesn't exist, because in my view, a friend is somebody you confide in, and you can't confide in anybody in Scientology, because they're just going to write you up. They're going to write a report about you because they think they're actually helping you. So if you went to your friend and you said, oh my God, I love my wife, but I'm having second thoughts and I don't know what to do, and I just need to talk to somebody, they would write up a report on that, and you would be pulled into the org, and you'd have to go over it with somebody. So, and you'd probably be interrogated about what you did to make yourself feel that way. But so I had people that I was really friendly with, but I could not really call them friends because there was always that separation. A few people that I'm not going to mention who are still in, that I broke my heart to have to sever ties with them. One person who I'm also not going to mention, who was a Sea Org member who I was very close with, who I'm hoping will be speaking out soon, and I'm hoping we're going to create some content together. She left around the same time I did. She also was a creative, was a very important, she was in the Sea Org, but she had, her role was important enough that when she left, it was really a big loss for them. So yeah, it's like that's.
I know what you mean, man. I don't think I've had anybody come out that I've been able to really reconnect with, except for Marcus. We used to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting. There's a few people I'm really hoping
sure
will come out, because it's like,
I'm sure they'll come, man, especially with what's happening with Scientology getting hit from every angle. So I bet you more and more people will start to wake up. We seem like we're on the right track, at least, Mitch,
Yeah,
compared to where we were 10 years ago.
Yeah, and you were right to ask, by the way, and you were right to comment about it being superficial, because your connections in Scientology are very superficial, because there's nothing personal. You don't have a personal life in Scientology. You don't. It just doesn't exist. It's your personal life is whatever's in your folders that you're not allowed to talk to anybody about.
I don't even know how the hell we were in for so long, or how I fell for that, especially the more I talk about this with people like you. It's just amazing.
It's crazy
to hear you talk and then go,
it's absolutely
I can't
crazy.
believe I was in that.
It's crazy. I know. And there's people out there who are thinking, how could you guys be so stupid?
I know. It's a good question, but I still don't understand it, Mitch, because when I hear you talk, man, I'm like, what are you? I was a part of that. Like, why didn't any red flags go off? That's why I'm saying, my man.
Yeah, because you refused to accept the status quo. Good. You were idealistic. Good.
I know.
You valued connections with people. Good. You sought an authentic human experience. good. And then all of those things that I just checked off, they all got turned against you. And that's the real tragedy of it.
And we kind of didn't see it because it's drip, 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 bit by bit by bit. So you don't realize your life is turned 180 by the time you're in for a decade.
Yeah, that's correct.
You know what's really disgusting, really, Mitch, before we end off?
Okay.
I feel like, the narcissist wants attention, whether it's good or bad. All publicity is good, right? So he died in 1986, and I feel like he got his wish because here we are, all of us, talking about this man who should be irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. It just sucks that we even have to talk about this guy in order to kind of undo or, see Scientology be held to legal account. So it's just, it still feels like that asshole.
Well, as long as
David
Miscavige continues to stoke the engine that is Scientology, then we are absolutely going to keep talking about it.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. So it's like, Hubbard can turn over in his grave because 99.9% of everything that's said about him is completely negative. And
That's
every
true.
one of his lies from his career in Hollywood to his career in the military has been exposed. So
great point, man. Great point. So he doesn't win in the end. We all know he's full of complete shit.
No, and plus he's helping to further reckoning with abusive groups in general.
That would be nice.
Yeah, no, it's happening. I mean, it's
I
like,
see
look
that
at
too.
Look at YouTube. I mean, the ex-Scientology community, thanks to people like you and Aaron Smith-Levin and many other people who have sort of taken the reins on social media, which Scientology can never control. They can't threaten Google. I mean,
that's right.
You can't. It's just there's and it's created this, and there's so many people. I mean, people have reached out to me from these little abusive groups that don't have a voice and don't have a platform, and they watch all of the Scientology stuff because they recognize that they're not alone, and that there's somebody out there who's actually speaking for them too, even though it may not be in the name of their little abusive group. So.
Great point too. It's
important work. Since I was a kid, I wanted to do important work.
Well, you're doing it now, my man. And I always wanted to help out the planet too, Mitch. And then only when we get out can we maybe do some real help, man. It's so great that you got a second life. We could have been in there forever. Congratulations on getting the fuck out, man. And then your second life, and maybe it's just so much better being in the free world.
Yeah.
Friends,
and do me a favor, everybody, if you can, if you haven't, just go to my page and subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I'll be announcing when my book is out or pre-sales or whatever, but you'll get news about that. And I think it's an exciting read. I mean, it will whatever. Be. Of course I would say that, but
no, Mitch, you lived a fascinating life. We haven't even touched upon it, my friends, in this interview, and he's done many other interviews. Go listen to those as well. You have so much valuable information to share, man. I'm definitely buying that as soon as it comes out. Yeah. And I will leave a link in the description box, friends.
Okay, great.
To his YouTube channel where you can go and keep everything up to date. And I really appreciate you joining us. Like I said, friends, I'm still working on that outro, but in the meantime, we have to end off with the complete jackass that started all this. Thanks for joining us, friends. And thanks again, Mitch. I appreciate it, my man.
Thank you, Doug. Talk to you soon.
And you find in each and every case, you're finding the phenomenon of entities, communications, spaceships, other planets, locations, beingness in other states, and all of this, and you find this to be a consistent condition. You have fulfilled this definition of the mesh universe.